Ian Tostenson, the Restaurant Association. This is a very, very challenging time. Can you give us a little lay of the land about how hard restaurants have been hit by the orders from the health authorities to, in essence, shut down outside of any kind of
Yeah.
takeout service?
Well, I guess first of all, thank you for shining a light in this, Stuart. It's incredible. I mean, this is beyond anybody's wildest imaginations that we're having this conversation. And 2 months ago, we were talking about, a whole different world. But first off, it's important to understand there's 180,000 people that work in this industry and 13,000 restaurants. It's probably the fourth or fifth largest employer in British Columbia. What we have today is the health authorities shut it down, with the exception of takeout and delivery. We can talk about that. And so I would say that out of the 180, we're probably at least 160,000 people are unemployed right now, have been laid off from the industry, and that all the businesses are principally closed, with the exception of trying to come back online to see can they make some revenue out of the whole takeout and delivery thing. And it's a tragedy. The business is so incredibly, like a lot of small business, right? But this is such a cash dependent business. It had inflation on top of it. It was burdened with, rising labor costs, by employer health taxes. It was burdened by environmental fees, and it just, and just tightening the noose around them. And we recognized probably 3 or 4 months ago that even despite the crisis that we're in, that was becoming crisis on its own. Now we have a crisis, and we have no ability as an industry and no staying power to get through this. It's basically, most of these small businesses have enough to get them by for about 2 weeks, and then after that, they're in trouble.
And come tomorrow, they've got rent.
Yeah, so this is, one of the things that we as an organization are trying to make sure that we do is communication is the name of the game here. You've got business owners that are scared. They don't have the resources. They don't understand government. I mean, 3 weeks ago, it was say, get government out of my life. And now it's like, what's the government doing for my business? And the government's actually been quite proactive. So let's just talk about the federal government when it comes to things like rent. There's that have been announced that even we're trying to discern what it actually means. But rent is due tomorrow, and there is a $40,000 loan credit available. If business owners go to their banks, they can get a $40,000 loan backed by the federal government. 10,000 of that is forgivable. The problem is, what the banks are doing when the business owner goes in there. Is the bank being a bit sort of selective credit worthiness point of view, or is the bank just going to do that? We don't know that issue. But for sure, a business owner called me yesterday. He has a restaurant in North Vancouver. He owes $18,000 in rent tomorrow. And he said, I don't have $18,000 in rent. It's those kinds of numbers. They're massive numbers that have to be paid. And of course, the cascade effect is the landlord doesn't get paid, the landlord doesn't pay his mortgage, and then down the road we go. So I think we'll see something around that, Stu, that has to be. The Prime Minister has been quite clear that he wants to make sure that we can get business through this, because if we don't allow that, we're going to have many, many businesses not reopening.
Well, when I drive down the street or go out for a bike ride just to get out and get a little bit of exercise, I see restaurant after restaurant after restaurant closed, and I can't help but thinking, how do you find a strategy that's going to ensure that when we get through this, you can open the door? Because if you're losing all that staff, your supply chains, there's not just the landlords, there's all those other industries that supply restaurants to make sure that they're running. Well, the impact, the ripple down effect has got to be extraordinary.
Right. So, property, we talked about that. Now let's talk about employees. So there's sort of two areas there the government's been fast on is EI, so immediate EI for people that have been laid off. And now there's a program for any business to get up to 75% of 58,000, or basically a cap of just over $58,000. So there's about a $40,000 annual benefit towards someone's salary to try to keep people working, or at least keep them at home and on the payroll. So that's quite well covered. But the problem is that I had an email this morning, and it was all fine and good. But the food suppliers now, who've laid off all their people because their supply chain is dried up, that basically supply to restaurants, they've got a lot of outstanding accounts receivable, and they have a bunch of businesses that made that. So one of the things that we have done is working on a national basis, which is unusual for us because we're usually nested in British Columbia. And we started a website called One Table, and onetable.ca is a collaboration of independent restaurants all across Canada that basically saying to the government under a theme. And I think this is important that, when we look back at this is trying to put the wants of and the needs of industry into some articulated, simple message for government. Because in fairness to government, they've never been here before. They don't understand what this, and they're getting bombarded with requests of what they should do and can't do. So we've said, look, we need to have immediate protection from restaurants. We need to have money and cash flow to protect our employees. And then we have to have, and this is critical, is money to start up. So the startup is critical because we are going to be starting up in some form or fashion. So the restaurant goes to open and he needs to order $10,000 in food, and his supplier says, well, you owed me $20,000 from the last time. So that's going to have to be dealt with. And Jock Finlayson, the economist, said to me last week, he said, Ian, what happened in 2008, we have to avoid fast to make sure that everything is fluid. We let those things happen because that business will close, and then we have the ripple effect. So, having that cash injection at the end. The other side of this is we've worked with the provincial government, but the word deferral keeps coming up. And so we can defer PST and we can defer liquor licensing fees. And now it's saying is that, well, if I reopen in 4 months and I have all these fees that I've deferred, how attractive is that? So we're going to have another problem to deal with there. But the real key to this at the end of the day is communication at all levels. We spend 24/7 literally making sure that the information that the governments have gets translated into business talk. So a business owner is sitting with his wife at nighttime saying, honey, it's over. They can come to our site and go, you know what, they can clearly, I don't know what it is, because a lot of they just want to know that somebody's doing something on their behalf. I had a restaurant that called last week and said, I did not realize you guys were doing all this. He said, I was just about ready to rep my MP and my MLA to see what they can do for us. Well, that's not going to go anywhere. But when they found out that there is a lot of people all on the same page, this is not us trying to, or our industry trying to do something that the government goes, we don't want to do that. The government is willing and able. They just need to be directed in the right way to make sure the right application that would triage the situation correctly and then put the right tools in place to help the business owner.
And quickly enough, I think that, speed is of the essence here because the next 3 to 4 weeks are going to be critical, especially for small restaurant owners. Well, it is really critical because the pressure, even as you said, even tomorrow with lease payments, that in its own, you can imagine having to go to somewhere and say, can you please not throw me out? They're not going to throw them out. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. But the pressure of having such a large need to pay and having no money to come in. But what was the coolest thing in this whole thing is that, it showed the hospitality industry at its best. Every single restaurant that's called me have said, I don't care about anything else. I want to make sure my employees are taken care of. What programs are there for my employees? And I thought, wow, that's so unselfish. They're prepared to lose their ship, but they want to make sure their employees that have been so loyal to their business. But so I think, how long will this last? I don't know, but we haven't got weeks. So we did 2 weeks ago, as an example, we called the provincial government and said, if restaurants are primarily going to do takeout, we should add liquor to that takeout. So when Stu goes to skip the dishes, why can't Stu get his beer and wine? That keeps people off the street. It consolidates the order. It's a bit more incremental revenue for the restaurant. And we put that request in on Friday, and we had it approved
by government on Sunday, which was record taking, because typically that would take probably 2 or 3 months, if not longer. And it was the provincial government saying, okay, we can do this. We had a few quirks along the way, but by last Monday, it was approved. And now you're going to start seeing, a lot of restaurants that have takeout. Also, you can order beer and wine, which is great. Helps, but it's not going to. Takeout is not going to solve our industry's problems. But it was an example of government moving quickly and, for once, really looking at industry's expertise. We're not lobbyists. We're an organization that is interfacing with government to make sure we can find the right, as I said earlier, the right application of programs to make this industry survive.
Yeah. It's going to take a collective effort to get through this. And no matter what government does, we all need to be pulling together and trying to support one another. There's a few people that I have interviewed who said they're doing everything they can to order in meals just so that they can at least be making a contribution for trickle income. I think as consumers, we have to recognize that we play a role in this as well. If we want our favorite restaurants to stay open, we have to do all we can to support them now, and especially as they start to ramp up coming out of this.
Yeah, let's just give them a shout out. Earls and Joey have just done a marketplace now, so you can actually trees on their website. You can buy toilet paper, you can buy fresh produce. So they're trying to expand their offerings. White Spot, which is close to home for me, my wife is director of marketing there. They're doing a shout out and a value package to first responders and people in the first line. So everybody in that communal sense is trying to reach out and help each other. And I can help you and you can help me. People are buying gift certificates from restaurants or ordering online. What we saw the first couple of weeks is everybody went to every store and bought everything possible. Now I think people are realizing that there is a food supply chain that's not going to be disrupted. So we've got stuff in our pantry. You can start to enjoy some of the comfort of meals at home, which to your listeners and readers, that's really important to this industry and most appreciated.
One of the other things that I realized, I had somebody saying, well, seeing as we both have birthdays in the next couple of weeks, we won't get together for our typical lunch. I went, well, I don't know. We could go to the drive-in service at White Spot, and you could get takeout, and I can get takeout, and you can talk to me from your car. At least it's something for the restaurant, and it creates a social situation where you're not breaking rules around being in a confined space.